Hello and welcome back to another glamour video for Final Fantasy XIV with me, Meoni. The purpose of this video is to showcase all of the new Sanctifying light weapons, which are of course the brand new craftables, basically in the guise of the Hydaelyn Extreme weapons. These crafted glowies then will be available very easily by using the materials from the Hydaelyn X weapons to craft a plethora of items. There are 19 of these weapons, obviously none for the newer jobs. So let's go through these together. I've managed to get all of these together so that we can show them off. First off then, with the tanks, I was really happy with the way that these weapons looked. I will probably end up using these myself in quite a few glamours. The warrior one sets the bar quite high with these beautiful blue glowies across the board, that kind of sort of crystalline spectral thing going on in the center, and then we've got these almost like shooting stars orbiting around the actual weapon as well. It looks amazing in the dark. I'll try and show all of the weapons in a darker area as well using the explorer mode of the duty finder and Matoya's relic here. It's just absolutely stunning. So with that being said, that might be one of my favorites in this set. Let's move on to the other tanks then. So we've got Paladin. This again is a bit of a showstopper. I think most paladins who were using the Hydaelyn weapons before will be straight up upgrading for these. The glowies are absolutely gorgeous. We've got the bastard sword obviously here in the right hand, which looks amazing with all of those spectral effects that similar to what we saw on the warrior. And the shield is just wow. It truly is transcendent, isn't it? They do look really good. And in the dark, once again, to demonstrate those glowies, that ethereal sea basically flowing off of that blade freely, and with the shield emanating that ether as well. Absolutely lovely. And a bit of a passage of arms there just to show you what that would look like in action, which goes perfectly with the color scheme of that ability. For Dark Knight then, probably one of the nicest greatswords that they've ever added into the game, quite honestly. It has some of the more beautiful effects across the middle of the blade, which we'll have a nice close-up of right here. As you can see, you've got that gemstone that's kind of pulsating with light. It really does scream Hydaelyn, doesn't it? This is exactly what I wanted from the crafted versions of Hydaelyn's weapons. It really does hammer home the etheric, crystalline nature, you know, Hydaelyn-esque theme perfectly. I love the way that the color changes there from that blue to purple, sort of pinky purple, and it's sort of pulsating. Gunbreaker then, obviously gunbreakers have a much smaller area of actual item when they equip a weapon, which is unfortunate with a lot of gun blades. This one has a lot more metal than you'll find on a lot of the other weapons, with only a little bit of that crystalline thing going on, but the etheric sort of flow is still lovely across that. And honestly, it's still probably one of my favorite gunbreaker weapons. And I think it's mostly because of the glow. I think that's what sells this immediately, to me at least. And that orbiting shooting star that kind of spirals its way around the blade rather than just goes in a circle. Really quite nice little touch, little differences from the other tank weapons. Moving on then, we're going to go straight to the healers. So first of all, this still probably is my favorite Sage weapon in the game, the normal versions of these, but the glowy versions blow those out of the water. They are just amazing. They're floating daggers made out of crystal, basically. Kind of a lot of Sage weapons look like spaceships these days, especially as we're in, you know, obviously with Solution 9 and the Dawntrail expansion. So it's nice to have a refresher of something that looks more godlike, more crystalline, more down to, more down to fantasy, right? And yeah, they kind of look like miniature flying crystal daggers. I love the glow effect on these, and because there are obviously more than one of the new lifts, it looks pretty great. The Astrologian, a little bit disappointed with the card holder, actually. I was kind of hoping that that would also have the same spell effect, but I suppose that's not really that feasible. They don't usually do that with Astro. The actual globe itself, though, is gorgeous, isn't it? With the crystal there, with those purples and blues flowing in there with the ether transition of that animation. Looks really good, especially with the spiral as it rotates. It just looks really nice. And Scholar then, Scholar and Summoner, they have pretty much the same thing going on here. We'll show both of them, but I do like this book. I really do. I think it's probably a long way off from being my favorite of the books, but it does look absolutely stunning, and you could do a lot worse for a scholar book. But yeah, absolutely beautiful. I like those accents on the side there that kind of look a little bit like etheric wings or something. Yeah, White Mage. I love White Mage. Personally, one of my favorite healers. Nice little close-up of the reflection mapping on the top of a crystal, on the top of a staff, which actually blew me away when I first got this on the normal version of it. The actual extreme normal version of the weapon. But the glowy version is just amazing, isn't it? We've got that spiral effect going kind of back up as well as down, kind of not on a perfect orbit there. Then we go into Samurai then, so we're into our melee DPS. Samurai is absolutely stunning. It's very hard to do a bad Samurai blade. A lot of people like playing Samurai for the exact reason that so many weapons look good. Square Enix are fantastic at doing swords, and this one is no different. Look at that. Even the scabbard there has that beautiful glow in the dark, which, yeah, I wish they did that with the Astro stuff, to be perfectly honest, with a card holder and, you know, machinist packs, things like that. Moving on to Reaper then, this was probably one of the more used weapons I saw. A lot of people didn't glamour away from it. Obviously, Reaper was relatively, you know, new with that expansion. It looks pretty great, and it has probably the most crystals embedded into it. It's the most Heidelin crystal related weapon out of all of them. It looks pretty great, honestly. Really, really lovely. And I do like the spell effects on that. Dragoon, we've gone for a very simple sort of silver weapon with very sort of muted glows across it. It's got a little bit less of an etheric sort of flow across this, but it's still got quite nice rotation of those shooting stars, as I'm calling them. It's just a really nice weapon. I kind of wish that we could dye the extreme craftable weapons. I know that's something that you've not been able to do ever, but it'd be lovely if they added that in the future. That would add a lot more longevity of changing the color of a base weapon. For example, I like brass on a lot of my melee and like suits of armor, like the PvP one I'm wearing. So it would be nice to tailor the weapon metal around that and keep the glow. Ninja is quite cool. I do like those blades with the crystals sort of spiking out at the top there. They look absolutely stunning in the dark. And of course, because you've got two of these things as opposed to just having one main weapon, it's going to look pretty good as you're running around. Most people will notice these. They will notice them a mile off. Also like the hilts of those daggers as well. The sort of crystal in the center with the spiked metal coming off of that. Moving on then to Monk, which I was very surprised how good these look. I'm not much of a Monk player in the game, but I heavily respect people who play it. It's really nice to have some really cool Monk weapons. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Sometimes Monk weapons can be some of the more dull weapons in the game, it's fair to say, because of how small a lot of them are, but the accents are lovely. Moving on to our ranged physical then, we've got the Bard, which a lot of people like Bard weapons. Again, much like Samurai, there are big, bulky bows in the game, harp bows and the like, but this one's quite nice. I kind of wish that the spectral sort of spinny bit there was actually closer to where the arrow would be, you know, loosed from, rather than above that, but it is what it is. Machinist, typically guns aren't my thing. The ether pack hasn't changed. This is something I'm critical of all the time with Machinist. They should, in my opinion, have the ability to toggle the ether pack on the side of your hip on and off, or at least change it or customize it with the change of weapon designs. That's something I hope they look at in the future, maybe, because it's a little bit dull, especially when you have something as gorgeous as this pistol. Looks pretty great. The chakrams then on Dancer, kind of hard to get a good shot of this in that particular pose, so let's move on from that as it's bouncing around. But as you can see, we've got more of those purples and blues and lilacs flowing together. Lots of etheric flow coming off of this, and we get the perfect centered spirals as well on the chakram. Yeah, it's just a really nice weapon. There's a lot of dull chakrams in the game as well, and this is certainly a pair that is not dull at all. Very much like those. Moving on then to our casters. Red Mage always has nice rapiers. Not always, but they're always pretty good in comparison to a lot of other jobs. I do like my pokey swords, and you got the etheric focus there that also has the spiral on it. Yeah, it looks pretty good, doesn't it? And then the end of the dagger, you see how the metal ends and then it turns into crystal. That's a lovely touch. It's almost like ice is then crystal on the end of it, but it's like it's crystallized into a fine, infinite point that could really do some damage. For Black Mage then, very similar to the White Mage, only this time you have just full-on spiked crystals on the end rather than a globe. I think it's a really nice staff. It definitely sells the Black Mage theme. And yeah, the spell effects are exactly what you would want from this, I think. It also sometimes on a lot of these weapons that have a big shaft on them, like the Dragoon weapon and the Black Mage weapon here, you see that bit on the end, near the end of the staff? It kind of looks like glass. Very, very nice. And then obviously wrapping up with our 19th weapon, which is for Summoner, which again is very similar to Scholar. It is a little bit different. There is a little bit more metal on that design on the front. Yeah, honestly, you could do a lot better though with Summoner weapons. There are some fantastic Summoner books in the game, and I prefer it when Scholar and Summoner have vastly different styles, especially when it comes to this. But those were the weapons. I think personally my favorite is still probably the Warrior weapon, but let me know what your favorite is, and I hope this video helped kind of illustrate what they look like if you are intending to craft these or buy them yourself. Much love, more videos on the way, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.